Michael Crichton died of cancer last week. He was only 66, and we did not have time to pay proper appreciation at the time that he died, and so we do now. Michael was the author of more than a dozen blockbusters, including the Jurassic Park trilogy, Twister, and Congo, and others. His books sold more than 150 million copies. Many were adapted into film. He also created the hit television series ER, and at one time had the #1 book, the #1 movie, and the #1 television series. Steven Spielberg, the great director, said Crichton was the greatest at blending science with big theatrical concepts, which is what gave credibility to dinosaurs again walking the earth. Michael Crichton was born in Chicago in 1942 and raised in Roslyn, New York. He graduated summa cum laude from Harvard in 1964. He published his first book, The Andromeda Strain, in 1969 while attending Harvard Medical School. In the early 1970s, he gave up medicine and moved to California, where he began directing movies based on his books. His big break came with the 1973 cult classic Westworld. In recent years, Crichton drew notice as a sometimes doubter and critic of those who were suggesting climate change and its causes. He is survived by his wife, Sherry, and a daughter, Taylor. Michael Crichton appeared on this program 5 times over the years, and here's some of those conversations. What's the drive, in a sense? I mean, what's the mountaintop for you?
I'm not clear. You know, there was a time a few years ago when it was to pay the house payments.
Yeah, right.
That's clear.
Yeah.
That's easy, you know. Yeah, at some other point, I think, well, maybe what I do really is compulsive behavior. You know, maybe I'm just compelled to do it.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Yeah. But I also think, you know, there's something that happens to me a lot where the conventional wisdom frequently irritates me so much. You know, I'll hear somebody talking, or I'll read something, and I'll think, that is so. Robbie, the physicist, used to listen to certain presentations, and he would say, he's not even wrong.
No, that's a great one.
Not even in the ballpark.
Not in the ballpark.
Yeah.
Exactly what I was going to say. Not even close. Not even wrong.
Yeah, and I get so annoyed, you know, and I think a lot of that drives the writing.
The compulsion.
Yeah, in some sense of
and anger, and saying they don't have any clue as to what's really going on.
Right.
We've talked about motivation, understanding. Do you understand your talent?
No.
You don't.
My experience is of not being, and I think there's a lot of people who would agree with this, not being very gifted at writing, and of having to try really hard, to work very hard at what I do, to put in long hours and to concentrate on it. I don't feel in any way that I have natural abilities in this, and I just work hard. That's my experience.
Working hard.
Yeah.
Keeping your eye on the goal.
Well, this is something I wanted to do. You know, I wanted to be a writer, and I'm very happy to be doing it. But I don't think that I'm especially...
Is it easier?
No, it's harder.
It's harder?
Sure.
Why? Why do you say sure?
Well, I think that that's a common experience for people who do some activity.
The better you do it, the more difficult the more difficult it is, because you understand the levels of proficiency, one, and secondly, the more you do it, the more you understand about something, the more you appreciate the complexity of it.
Yes, and the more of all the easy things you get, so pretty soon you've done all those easy things.
You have a golden touch. You work like mad. I know you do. But everything you do turns, for the most part, gold. Congo, an old novel, makes money as a new movie. They're going back doing other things that you have written, as they have done with John Grisham, and a very different kind of writer. ER, television show. This has already been sold, as they say, speculate $8 to $12 million by Disney. It's none of our business. You have Jurassic Park, made a ton of money. you and your wife were their screenwriters for Twister. Made a ton of money. This book is 2.5 million copies.
No, I think it's only 2.
Okay, 2. All right, let's not exaggerate. Yeah. I see. I lost.
Well, it's getting to be so.
Well, it is getting to be so, but it's all true. What is it?
I have no idea. I mean, really, there was a time when, I guess around the time of Jurassic Park, when I thought, ooh, gee, things are going pretty well.
I know.
And then there was a time when I thought, I am the luckiest person alive. And then, as things went on, I just thought, I don't know what's happening, but this is pretty amazing. And then, by now, I guess I don't think about it anymore. I don't know. I have no explanation for any of this. Do you? No. I mean, it's just.
Well, no, I don't. I mean, I'm interested in what you thought. I mean, obviously we know that you have a first-class brain. I mean, you know, that's clear. It's clear that you understand. You know how to write, and it's clear that you have a touch. You know, all of that. And that you hit it, and so therefore people paid attention when you do it.
Okay, I'll tell you what I actually think is probably true. Statistically, things do run in streaks. I had a pretty good streak in the late 60s and early 70s. Yeah. I had what everyone has now forgotten, a pretty long streak of unsuccessful things from the middle 70s to the late 80s. Mm-hmm. Now I got another positive streak. But probably if you added up all the books and all the movies, they'd probably look like chance, you know.
Chance?
Well, I mean 50% or something like that, you know, flip of a coin,
yeah.
Whether they're successful or not.
Do you think you're especially smart, or you think that it is some other quality you have that enables you to be as productive as you are? Is it energy? Is it something else? Is it some X factor?
And I certainly don't think I don't feel smart.
You don't?
No.
Smart based on what you and I would recognize as somebody really bright.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think...
Some molecular scientist somewhere.
Yeah.
Or some...
There's this, Richard Feynman wrote in...
speaking of smart.
Yeah, speaking of smart. That's smart. Yeah, he's smart.
Exactly.
He wrote in one of his autobiographical books that he was listening to some philosophers and he decided to ask them a question. So his question was, does a brick have an inside? And I read that and I thought, well, that's a really interesting question. And Feynman's view was that if you could answer that question, then you would know what you were talking about. And I thought that's really interesting. I never understood but does a brick have an inside?
I don't know.
Why would we be asking that? Yeah. So no,
that's a more interesting question to me.
I don't feel real smart. I feel like I have to struggle to.
Yeah. You feel like it works because you work harder than most.
Yeah.
You dig harder, stay up later,
yeah.
Get up earlier, care more, look under every rock.
Yes. And actually, I think that's my assumption of, I assume that's what's true for most people who are successful.
I do too. I have never had anyone come on this program who have had extraordinary achievement, and I'm talking about 25 Nobel laureates as well, you know, and writers and artists, who've ever said to me, I can tell you the answer, I'm just smart. It's always, in their self-perception, has to do with commitment, has to do with discipline, has to do with appropriate sort of training
mm-hmm.
and focus.
Yeah, I think focus is a big one.
Focus. You got that?
Yeah, I do. Concentration.
What does that mean?
It means that I think of it like long-distance running or something like that. I mean, I think of it as over time having built up a tolerance for trying to figure something out over a period of years even, you know, and being patient. Like this press thing, I mean, I have notes. It was interesting. I had notes for a novel called Frame, 89. So I had some idea about the media. In 89, I'm waiting and waiting. Maybe I'll get it, and maybe I won't. Maybe it'll come to me, and maybe it won't. But that's a sort of endurance. And then to just sit at the word processor and good days and bad days, plenty of bad days.
If I ask this question, what do you want? Is there an answer? Do you know? What does success mean to you?
Success to me means opportunity. I mean, in the area in which I work. Because the great difficulty that people have who want to write books or do movies or have TV shows is they don't feel they have access. They can't get their book published or their movie made or their TV show on the air. I can now. So that's what it means. It means I have the opportunity, so better have something to say.
I was thinking about all the things you do and all of your interest in history and science, but in the end, when push comes to shove, as they say in that often quoted cliche, you are a storyteller.
I think that's right, yeah.
That's what you do.
Yes. That's what I like to do.
Where does that come from?
I don't know, because my daughter has it too, and it started at an early age. I mean, when I would tell her fairy tales, she'd stop me and go, "No, Dad, he doesn't come out of the warehouse. He stays in there until the giant leaves or something." I think, wait a minute, You're editing Grimm's. I mean, so there's some kind of an impulse about what makes a suitable story and what's right. And I think there may also be, it sounds funny, but there may also be some kind of sadistic impulse in there too.
Sadistic?
Yeah, I mean, there's all kind. What you're really doing in a narrative is you're paying out information bit by bit, which also means that you're holding it back.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to make people worried about something. You know how it's going to turn out, but you want the reader to have this feeling intermediately. And in that kind of manipulation, which I think is very pleasurable to experience if it's done well, there's something like sadism. I mean, that's what Hitchcock was accused of, too.
Yeah, I know. Do you like the isolated quality of writing?
Well, usually when I'm writing, I wish I weren't. And when I'm working on a movie, I wish I was writing. So it's some way to be perpetually dissatisfied, I think.
If someone says to you, you're marrying thriller
Mm-hmm.
with science fiction, you say, not so much fiction.
I hope, yeah.
Yes, a thriller, yes, a novel, but less science fiction than you might imagine.
That's always my intent, or my
And
effort.
calling card.
Yeah. Yeah, because, for example, when you're talking about quantum physics, it's very, very difficult. And I'm hardly, a person to really be knowledgeable. When I'm looking at this, it's so hard to describe it at all. I recognize that there's a certain level where a physicist would say, yes, that's the correct way to state it. But no one would get it at all. No reader would understand it. And then there's another way, which is pretty easy to understand, but the physicist would say, no, it's completely wrong. Somewhere in the middle is a way of putting this information that's okay to read for a reader, mm-hmm. and the physicist will say, well, okay. And that's where I'm trying to get this. It's some balance between what's technically accurate and what's understandable.
Why is it you're so fascinated with science? I mean, we all know you went to medical school, and we all know that while you were in medical school, you started writing novels under pseudonyms and have pay your way. And we all know that Jonas Salk said to you, you're a better writer than doctor.
Yeah.
Right?
True words. And he said no. Yeah.
So what is it about science for you?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's something that's very easy for me. And it seems to me that an enormous amount of what constitutes social change in my lifetime has been a function of scientific development. So the technologies that we're experiencing, which are, you know, enormously different from what they were 20, 40, 50 years ago, are what's driving a lot of the change in the society. And increasingly, I think, if you don't understand the science, you're not going to be able to really make informed decisions. And arguably, in the past, some people would say we have made very uninformed decisions.
You have basically said also that the only time that science has been stopped was with the supersonic transport.
Yes.
That's the only time people said it's too much environmental damage and too much noise and it's not worth the cost.
And too expensive.
And too expensive.
And who wants it anyway?
No other time. Now, there are a lot of people in Congress and everywhere else saying, we know how to clone, but we ought not go down that direction, you know. Where are you worried about science?
I'm quite worried about the whole area of self-reproducing technologies, which is already biotechnology. Yeah, right. And that's part of why I did this, was to try and make an example of what might be in our future. But we don't really need to worry about nanotechnology right now and self-reproducing
20, 30
machines.
years off.
Maybe 10, but you know, not today.
Here's what you have said also. Atomic bombs are terrible weapons, but genetic engineering can do far more damage than nuclear bombs. That's a powerful statement. And what do you mean by genetic engineering in that context?
I'm not sure is one answer.
Well,
I think I'm talking.
You said it.
Well, please. I think
You can say things you're not sure about.
Right.
That's your point.
That's right. Yes,
You know.
it's terrible to have your past brought back to you.
Well, this wasn't a long time ago.
No.
It was not a long time ago.
That makes it worse. You know, for example, I mean, just to take at the height of all the Cold War and all the issues about nuclear exchanges, nobody seriously thought. I mean, in the days of Herman Kahn, or, you know, the Dr. Strangelove imagery, no one thought that a nuclear exchange would end life on the planet. But conceivably, if there were some kind of a virus that interfered with photosynthesis in enough plants,
Which is the essential component to life.
right, everything's gone. The biosphere is essentially wiped out.
And it's possible.
Different kind of power.
And it's
yeah.
possible.
Oh, I don't know. I hope it's not possible. But there certainly are coming to be some examples in which things that were imagined to be very, very difficult in genetic technology are being discovered to be not necessarily so difficult. Bad things. You know.
So back to my question. What's necessary for a civilized world to make sure, you know, that it makes wise decisions about science?
Okay. I have a weird answer, which is, why don't we all walk around naked? And it isn't really because there's a law about it or there's a regulation. We don't do it for lots of reasons, and we're trained not to do it. And there's all kinds of social pressures not to do it. And I think one important thing is the education of scientists themselves, in terms of having an intuition and an idea about what not to do. I mean, a very important change in my lifetime is I have heard scientists say, we were looking at this line of research and we decided not to follow it. It's too dangerous.
Of all the things you have done, what has brought you the most psychic income satisfaction?
Whatever is really difficult.
Really? The more difficult, the more pleasure.
Yeah, more sad. I mean, it was very difficult for me to do a book 20 years ago called Travels. That was because it was about myself, and I didn't like to talk about myself.
I liked it, actually.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm trying to do another one, and I'm actually, I mean, it sounds perverse to many people, but I'm proud of having done the book about global warming.
I mean, if you listen to this conversation, you have to be
thinking. I knew everybody
thinking.
was going to be against me, and I thought, this is what I believe, and I'm sorry, and I said it, and I did it, and I've taken just flack for it, but you know what? It is what I believe. And
you're proud that you did it because of you went into rough seas.
Very rough seas. And nasty and personal and brutal and unfair and mean.
Well, what was nasty, brutal, unfair, and mean?
Oh, Charlie, this is, I mean, you want to look at what people say. For example, when I started talking about genetics, people said, well, you know, you might get some criticism for this. Well, I haven't gotten any criticism for genetics, let me tell you. I mean, you know, I know what criticism is. But I've had the experience of having had books in print for 40 years. So I can go back and look at the stand that I took in favor of abortion when I was a medical student in Boston in 1967, 6 years before Roe v. Wade, and I can look at that and go, was I right or not? And I think, damn it, I was right. And I'm imagining when I wrote this book, when I wrote the State of Fear, I was imagining, what's it going to look like in 40 years? I think I'm going to come out just fine.
A personal note about Michael Crichton, he was one of my most favorite guests. He could talk about anything, architecture and art and science and medicine and movies and books and writing. He knew so many interesting people, and he can tell you about them in so many interesting ways. He was, in fact, one of the most interesting conversationalists I knew, and he will be deeply missed by his family, his readers, his viewers, and people who knew of his remarkable gifts. Michael Crichton, dead at 66.